And we're back on the air for that live chat on our Friday mornings with the wonderful Jason Spiess. How are you doing today, Jason?
Excellent. And how are you doing on this fine festive Friday?
Oh, just dandy. Just wonderful. It's a good one. I'm happy.
What level of handshaking do you have around your office? Are you guys still shaking hands, or have you gotten to just waves? Or
Oh my gosh, it's so strange. We had a chamber banquet last night, and I didn't even think about it. I just found myself shaking people's hands. But see, I don't worry about it because I wash my hands.
right?
Also, I made myself some hand sanitizer. But I feel weird not shaking someone's hand because, I mean, I haven't taught them the cool foot handshake yet. The foot shake. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little bit different of the levels of scare, coronavirus scare out there, as well as the cancellations have really shocked me, to be perfectly honest. And there's a bunch of different ways. Of course, it's affecting the energy industry. It's in a variety of different ways, from petroleum, transportation, to consumer goods, to think about what's going on at the movie theaters, think about restaurants, think about anything with public outings are probably being impacted. Trips. I saw a story about how the airline industry had never seen anything like it in terms of dropping of flights and that sort of thing. So this is going to have a real effect through the industry. And of course, with the energy industry, Trump has already come out and started some conversations about whether they will need a bailout. And the industry, the old school guys' knee-jerk reaction was absolutely not. Don't even bring up that conversation. We're not interested in anything like that. That's not what the energy industry is all about. So that's one story that you should keep an eye on, because we've talked about this over the last year and a half, 2 years, however long you've been there. I know your predecessors, we've been talking about this as well, which is the energy industry is going through a shift, a paradigm shift. We've had some CEOs on this program before, back when they were accessible. Now it's like a rare white albino elk sighting to find these CEOs nowadays. And I mean that to be, tongue in cheek. I don't mean that to take a shot at them, because back when the shale revolution was in its heyday, they were at conferences, going around and being very accessible. Now it's different times, So, but back then they were talking about a paradigm shift. And I've said this before. These CEOs, they don't chuck and jive, and they don't say things that are going to be over the top, sensational, like, a lot of news pundits. No, they have to say things that are pretty accurate. Otherwise they get sued, or shareholders get upset, or competition will get upset. So they've got to be careful with what they say. So when a lot of these leaders were saying, the energy industry is going through a paradigm shift, I firmly believe the bailout is an example of the paradigm shift at a crossroads. Meaning that if they do what the knee-jerk reaction was, which is reject the bailout, then that part of the industry has remained intact. If they take the bailout, then the industry, I think, is just completely changed. Completely, because now you've got government, and it's a little bit different than like, say, the FCC with what Carl's got with the radio station there. And even some energy municipalities, when you start talking about public works, there's kind of a set of public trust and rules. When you're bailing someone out, you're giving them money. That's a different expectation. That's a different chain of command, if you will, than, say, what a radio station has with the FCC. That's more of an agreement and an arrangement. A bailout's a little different. I understand it's still an agreement and an arrangement, but it's a totally different understanding. So that's one story I think people should really keep an eye on when it comes to the energy industry, because if they start taking a bailout, then that's a whole different conversation, and we'll be having podcasts and radio shows and all kinds of interviews to that. The other part is this coronavirus, which is real, and the level of hysteria, that's to be determined. I've talked to an infectious disease doctor, and he's going out to dinner tonight, so he's perfectly fine. He washes his hands. I asked him about the toilet paper, and he said he doesn't understand the toilet paper because this is not a gastrointestinal symptoms at all. So he doesn't understand where that even came from, how that became a thing. But we're going to be interviewing him sometime over the next few days about this. Since a lot of my interviews now will just go online, but they don't hit the radios till Monday and that sort of thing. So over the next few days, maybe over the weekend, we'll interview Mark Sanis from he's down in Hutchins, down in Minnesota, Minneapolis, doing infectious diseases. And so great knowledge when it comes to this topic. And the other parts of it too, when you're talking about the coronavirus, there's some myths out there, and then there's some things that are factual. And to me, a lot of it boils down to, what do you do? The canceling of events has just perplexed me beyond belief. Now, when we look at the hysteria of it, it's easy to jump on the conspiracy bandwagon. It's very easy to jump on this is just the flu. And there's a lot of truth behind actually both of those, to be perfectly honest. And you're probably familiar with both of those different, kind of, if you walked into a bar, these are the different conversations you'd be hearing, okay? And really what I think, especially talking to Mark Sanis and the doctors and some of the other things, I think what their big concern is more of the staffing of the hospitals. When you start getting into some of this hysteria and some of this realistic, some people are susceptible. Some are. Not everybody, and not even the majority of people, but some are. And when everybody's going to the hospital, they're not equipped for that. And it's flu season. And so I think that's actually the biggest reason for a lot of this kind of containment, this public containment. I do think the NBA was going to just do the fanless experience. I think the NBA is the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, or got the snowball rolling, because after they canceled, then everybody just started canceling. The NCAA tournaments, they were going to do a fanless experience, which is really, I don't agree with that. And you're in the media, so you can understand what I'm talking about here. You've done live events, right? You've done things in front of live events, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people.
It's not the same. I felt bad for the players on that regard, because players at live events like this, whether it's a game or just a production of any kind, it's the people that everyone is watching. They utilize the energy from the crowd.
Totally.
So I feel like it would have really affected the playing.
And that's what I try to explain to people, is that, when you're out in front of people, whether it's a basketball game or it's a professional wrestling event or it's a rock concert or it's like what you and I do sometimes, like I get in front of people at the Bakken barbecue when I MC it, and there's 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people there. That's a lot of people to be in front of. And you play off that energy. You feel that energy. If you watch VH1 for any amount of time, you'll find some documentary on rock stars. And the whole reason that they go down the drug and alcohol path, most of them, is because they're searching for that high. That high that you get on stage, because you can't bottle it. And so I do feel bad for the players that would, if they played without fans, it's just, it'd be a different experience. And the energy and the fan experience is a very big part of the game. It's a very big part of the game. Even like when I watch my kid play basketball, he's in 8th grade, and what is there? 50, 70 people there, mostly parents. The kids, they still love it because, you got parents yelling and cheering and everything like that. And that's just on the small scale of things. So imagine playing your whole life. You're playing for Belmont. And then all of a sudden you get to go play Kansas in the tournament and there's no fans there. Let's say you beat them. Let's say you beat Kansas in front of no fans. Oh, man. If a tree falls in the forest, did it happen? But it's just interesting to me. The social engineering behind this has been a very interesting dynamic to watch play out. And like I said, I think the NBA had a lot to do with it. I think they were going to be cool with the fanless experience. And then when a couple players got it, then that was it. And, they had a public responsibility. They had a public relations responsibility. And, here's the interesting thing about that, too, because talking off the air and getting some pre-interview stuff done, I asked about, the NBA, but I would have thought it'd be more than just the one or two players because you're sweating, you're bumping up against each other and all this different stuff. And so that's kind of really some good news when you think about it, because it is more of a coughing, sneezing type of a thing. So the hand washing is important, and the mouth and the sneezing and the covering and that sort of thing. It's not so much about the sweat and do you know what I mean by that? Yeah. So, that's important information too. So it's getting back to the whole banning and canceling of things. I would be a little bit, if I was the public and I did not want to put my conspiratorial hat on, but I wanted to put my public citizen hat on, I would say that the initial, I don't like this, it stinks meter would be on the fact of the public officials one-upping each other with cancellations. It seemed like that kind of went on. Like when the schools started canceling, before the State Department's public health recommended it, to me, that was one-upsmanship. Now, I'm not trying to discount anybody for, edging on the side of safety, but there's a fine line between safety and hysteria, and that's where real leadership shows its colors. And when you start canceling schools before the state health department comes out and recommends things like that, you're showing leadership of some kind. That's all I'm going to say. Whether it's positive or negative is a different story. That's for the public to decide.
Perspective
right.
Opinion, I suppose, at that point.
Right.
I would agree.
Yeah. So again, I'm not trying to, be political here. I'm not trying to be opinion based, but the fact of the matter is, in many states, they did cancel schools before the state health departments declared it to that level. So, so I think there's a lot to be learned about this. For one, it's still going on. It's still a problem. I'm in my mid 40s and I'm a white male, so apparently I'm okay. If I'm on the elderly side, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm probably not shaking hands at the Catholic Mass. I mean, it's.
Well, and there was a 103-year-old Chinese woman who just recovered from this virus. It's not as much about age as it is about pre-existing health conditions and whether or not your immune system is simply healthy enough to take it.
Oh, I know. And, there's some other questions I have, pets, because my understanding is that this started with bat soup and then transmitted from animals to animals. Now, I get that the bat soup thing, I think, is now debunked, that's one of the theories, but I know that was the initial theory, that somebody bought some bats from a farmer's market down in China. They call it something else. That then started the whole deal, but it did transmit from animal to animal, and then it went from animal to human, and then human to human. And when viruses do that, of course, that sets off a flag with a lot of infectious disease people and people in healthcare, because when it's animal to animal and then animal to human and then human to human, how do you control that from the animal side of things? So I do want to, yeah. What's that? I'm sorry?
I hadn't heard that origin story.
Oh yeah, look it up. That's there. The bat soup. I think it's bat wing soup. Apparently that's a delicacy in Asia, or a staple. I don't know which one. I would be disgusted by either one, to be honest. I don't particularly care to eat bat, whether it be poached, sautéed, or blackened, or fried. I don't think I'd enjoy bat any which way you do it, but whatever, to each their own. Anyway, that's kind of one of the first popular theories behind it. But the reason I bring it up is I do want to find out about the pets. For me, I'm a big advocate of random dogs licking my face. I'm okay with that, man. I love it. I'll rub their belly all day long. In fact, I like more dogs than I prefer humans. So let's talk about that. I mean, so can I just go pet random dogs, or am I going to get the coronavirus from that too? So.
Well, I mean, it's a good question. I guess I hadn't considered it. I don't know. we'll probably need to wrap this up here pretty quick, though.
Not much to do with energy this week specifically, but a few things to keep an eye on when it comes to energy. Of course, the coronavirus is going to impact the economy greatly because you're going to have businesses unbelievably affected by people self-quarantine and staying home and not just being a part of their regular routine, unlike literally overnight. I mean, on a dime. We're talking about within a week's time frame, people's behavior has changed. So there's going to be more to come with this, and we'll be following it with the Crude Life. So check us out. We got a daily podcast Monday through Thursday with a weekend review on the weekends. And then, of course, the weekends for us is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We work Fridays, but in our mind, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we'll see you next week, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you so much. It was great talking with you, Jason.